We start here at home, a historic day in Washington. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson took another step towards joining the Supreme Court. Part of a professional journey that senators in both parties noted today has been remarkable, distinguished, and inspiring. And as she readied herself for this grilling to come, especially tomorrow, today she struck a note of humility about replacing the very judge she once worked for.
It is extremely humbling to be considered for Justice Breyer's seat, and I know that I could never fill his shoes. But if confirmed, I would hope to carry on his spirit.
It's just some of that poise and class that had some Republicans treading quite carefully in their opening statements today. That and the raw math that President Biden is on track to win this clash by just holding his own party's votes. Now, there is no presidential decision that leaves a longer imprint on American government than who gets this lifetime appointment to the high court. Today, several senators noted some version of the blunt history here. And let's be clear, a whopping 97% of all the Supreme Court's members have been white. The court has never, ever included a black woman jurist. Several Democrats took today's opening to note that itself would be an overdue change. And these are not just statistics or some kind of oversight. The reason the Supreme Court has been 97% white is because of discrimination. It's because leaders in both parties kept the court that way, guarding the nation's highest court, which is the last word in our system on what the law says and what it allows and what justice requires, guarding it as a kind of last bastion of an exclusive white membership, which is one way to reinforce white supremacy. This is basic, this is known, this is a fact, but it is relevant today as we think about the potential change to the court's membership. In fact, it was over 50 years ago that the first black lawyer was put on the court, Thurgood Marshall. His retirement brought the second black American to the court, Clarence Thomas, as President Bush looked for nominees who would not drop the court's black membership at the time back to zero. Now, senators spoke to this very history in their remarks today, some Republicans saying that they welcome a court that looks more like America while promising to grill the nominee, and Democrats touting this breakthrough along with Judge Jackson's range of credentials.
With 115 justices having served so far in our history, you're the first black woman, and it's long past time.
Judge Jackson is no judicial activist. She is not a puppet of the so-called radical left.
She wasn't groomed in partisan petri dishes.
I think you and your family are giving a lot more people faith that we will achieve a nation of liberty and justice for all.
For her part, Judge Jackson invoked her parents' example for pursuing progress, be it in her own career or the nation at large.
My parents taught me that unlike the many barriers that they had had to face growing up, my path was clearer, so that if I worked hard and I believed in myself in America, I could do anything or be anything I wanted to be.
On this big day in the law, we bring in two legal heavyweights, NYU law professor Melissa Murray and New York Times Magazine legal writer Emily Bazelon. Welcome to both of you. Professor, what did we learn today about this jurist, this woman, given that it was mostly opening statements from the senators?
Well, I think we got a very clear view, Ari, of where the Republican opposition will come from. But we also saw Judge Jackson come out swinging, offering a really pointed rebuttal of what we can expect from her tomorrow. So she made very clear that she was an independent jurist, someone who approached each question with an open mind and with full view of what the law required. She was not a tool of the radical left. She also movingly invoked her daughters and the challenges of trying to balance her work as a mother with her work as a lawyer. And I think a number of women in the audience could definitely identify with that. And like an earlier nominee, Amy Coney Barrett, she made much of her faith. And I thought that was a very pointed inclusion, one that underscored that the Republican Party does not have a monopoly on faith. And this, too, was something that Democrats could invoke, a fidelity to God, country, and the Constitution.
Yeah, and you mentioned that. I mean, there's more than one piece of the family part. I actually want to play Senator Cory Booker again because he read from her daughter's letter. And Emily, we all know how politics and partisanship work, but I think just about anyone could relate to this idea of this precocious young person, I believe 11 years old at the time, lobbying for their own parent. Cory Booker referenced it. Let's take a look at that.
I suspect after these proceedings, and please God, after your confirmation of the Supreme Court, something new will happen in America. That letter from your daughter will not be exceptional, whether they're daughters of white parents or black parents or biracial parents or Muslim and Jewish parents, Sikh or Hindu parents. We're going to see a new generation of children talking about their mamas and daring to write to the President of the United States of America that my mom should be on the Supreme Court.
Emily?
I mean, I just think it's so great that her daughter wanted to recommend her for any job. I think there are many parents out there who probably just felt moved by that idea that, you know, a kid would feel so strongly, so positively and warmly about their parent. And the idea that kids could feel like they have a voice, that it would be worth writing to a president and taking a stand on who the next Supreme Court justice or a next judge should be, that's a level of political engagement that is also just really impressive in itself.
Fair. And Professor, since you mentioned it, here was also Judge Jackson today, because this was sort of the theme. And the first day, as we know, can be quite biographically focused. She was kind of addressing her own daughters, but in a sense, any younger generation in that statement. Let's take a look at that part.
Girls, I know it has not been easy as I've tried to navigate the challenges of juggling my career and motherhood. And I fully admit that I did not always get the balance right. But I hope that you've seen that with hard work, determination, and love, it can be done.
Professor?
Well, again, I think this is a really pointed message. We saw in the last confirmation, so much was made of Justice Barrett's motherhood, but we saw very little of the details of how the sausage was made, how Amy Coney Barrett managed to balance having 7 children with a high-profile job as a law professor and then later as a judge. Here, we had someone being very forthright and candid that it was hard, it was difficult, and she did not always get it right. But what remained steadfast was the love she had for her family, the love and commitment she had for her career, and that's what saw her through. And I think that's really inspirational to a lot of people. We've just gone through a pandemic when so many women have been forced to leave the workplace because of the challenge of balancing work and family. And I think this was a very inspirational and relatable message to American women.
And Emily, the White House began the day very confident. They feel they have the votes to win. And if you win the confirmation, there is no difference between 50 and 90 or 100. You have the same voting power on the Supreme Court. Did you see anything today that should concern or knock that balance off track? The White House and the aides, and we reported on this on Friday. We did a report showing former Senator Jones and some of the other White House team that I spoke with, who said basically, this ain't a spending bill. We have all 50. That's not a direct quote.
No, I didn't see anything to throw the nomination off track. I think the Democrats must be feeling really good about how smoothly the day went, how well their nominee performed. I think it's really helpful that Judge Jackson has been before the body of the Senate multiple times before. She knows the drill. They know her. She has passed these confirmations before with flying colors. That will make it, somewhat harder for Republicans to justify voting against her. Many, if not most, or possibly all of them will do that. But the aspect of a confirmation hearing, which is about performance, about someone being in action, seeing them live, seeing how their mind works, so far, she, I would say, is doing exactly what she needs to do.
Yeah. So we've used some of the balance of time here to discuss what we heard at the hearing and a lot of what the Democrats think, and they're in charge of the committee, they're in charge of the Senate. So in a very real way, that matters. On the Republican side, Professor Murray, we heard a case that was developed across several coordinated opening remarks that focused not so much on Jackson or attacking her yet, but really on attacking the Democrats on the other side of the lectern and saying they're not substantive, they're mean, they're nasty, and this hearing will be, they claim, we'll see, more respectable than some other recent ones you might recall. What was going on there? What's your analysis of that? What's your assessment of that?
Well, so Ari, again, the politics of grievance was very much on display. Again, many of the nominees that they invoked, Robert Bork was the only one who didn't actually make it to the court, but all of the others were confirmed despite some very serious hiccups in the confirmation process. They specifically invoked Brett Kavanaugh, for example, and we all know what happened there. But again, I can't underscore enough, this was not about Judge Jackson. This was about laying a political foundation for castigating the Democrats for their work in the confirmation process. And I think even some of the critiques of Judge Jackson's record, the idea that she is soft on crime, that's not about her because it can be easily rebutted based on evidence from her record. What it is about is laying a foundation for criticizing the Democrats and Democratic candidates in 2022 and in 2024. So this is political theater to some degree, and Judge Jackson, unfortunately, is a bit of a pawn in it.